welcome to ECCB Connects, a production of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank designed to share with you who we are, what we do, and how we serve you. In today's program, Governor of the ECCB, Timothy N.J. Antoine, discusses the bank's financial performance and highlights some of its major activities over the 2022-2023 financial year. Stay connected with us. We'll share more with you after this break.
EC Polymer Notes, our new money.
Here's how you can detect genuine EC polymer notes. Feel. Polymer notes feel smoother than the material from which paper notes are made. Also, the front of each note has raised bumps at the top left-hand corner. These bumps form shapes that are familiar to you. Look for the clear window at the front and back of each note. This window allows you to see through the notes. If you hold the notes up to the light, you'll see the value of the note in an area of plain colored print. Tilt. A holographic foil is on the $100, $50, and $20. The images move and their colors change when you tilt the notes. Remember, detecting genuine EC polymer notes is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Feel, look, and tilt.
EC Polymer Notes. Cleaner, safer, stronger.
Governor, welcome to ECCB Connects.
Thank you, Karina. It's great to be back on Connects.
Now, as mandated in the ECCB agreement, the bank has released its annual report as at 30th June, outlining the activities, accomplishments, and the financial performance of the ECCB over the 2022-23 financial year. And those activities are large part guided by our strategic plan. Now, looking back at the year, what would you say are some of the major accomplishments of the bank over the 2022-23 financial year?
Well, I think the first thing is that the EC dollar remains very strong. You know, sometimes we take it for granted, but it's a daily work and effort on our part to keep our dollar strong, to keep our currency safe. And throughout the last year, we've seen the continued resilience of the EC dollar. We were tested during the pandemic with tourism shut for a while and foreign reserves exchange not coming in. But we have always maintained very high levels of reserves, and that has proven to be very helpful, especially in times of shock. So sometimes people say, well, maybe you're carrying too many reserves or too high level of reserves, but our view has always been it's an insurance policy to allow us to be able to weather shocks, to have those buffers. So that's the first thing I point to. The EC dollar remains very strong. Right now it's about 92% in backing. At the height of the pandemic, it went down to 89.90 and it's coming back up. And keep in mind, the law requires us to be at 60%, which means for every $1 in circulation, $1 of notes, coins, and demand liabilities, we should have at least 60 cents in foreign reserves. That number is around 92. And it's climbing again as the investment income improves. So I think that's the first thing I would point to. The second thing is region-wide, the recovery is well entrenched. The economies are recovering after the very difficult season of the pandemic. You would recall in 2020, we had our largest growth shock of 17%. Some countries were a little higher, the tourism-dependent economies like Anguilla and Antigua and Barbuda and St. Lucia. And now we're recovering. Last year, 2021, we did about 5, 2022, we did about 9%. And in fact, we're going to do about 5% in 2023. So much so that by the end of this year or early next year, most of our economies would have recovered to pre-2019 levels. And that is really on the back of a very strong rebound in tourism. Now I mentioned 2019 because it's a marker, it's a milestone. 2019 wasn't so great that that's what we want to hang our hat on. But as we recover, we have to go back to where were we before the pandemic. But we have to push on, we have to press on. Because as I keep saying, resilience is about the capacity to absorb and withstand shocks and to bounce forward, not back, forward. That's a very important concept, Karina, because every shock should allow us to derive positive legacies. So if I could give an example, during the pandemic, we had to strengthen our health systems. We had to invest in PPE, in training, in technologies. And we also had a sharpened focus on mental health because of the lockdowns.
Correct.
Those are positive legacies of the pandemic. Nobody wanted it. It wasn't fun. But how do you bounce forward? That's an example of what I mean. And a simple additional example would be digital tools, the use of digital tools. How we embraced that. We had to.
Necessity, yes.
Correct. And we had to for work, worship, shopping, school, connection with family and friends and so on. That, of course, endures. So my point is that we need to be bouncing forward. So 2022-23 was a good year for us in that respect. And then the other big thing really was the reopening. So we opened for the world, but we also reopened for ourselves. After working from home at the bank for 2 years, we actually returned to campus, most of our staff, which was great. And now we have a hybrid, but we are getting the best of both worlds. The flexibility to work from home, but the value of coming in on campus, where we mix, where we brainstorm, where we create together, co-create, collaborate. When new staff get to be integrated and understand what a regional central bank is, what it is to be work in a regional institution, and the mindset that is required to serve as a regional public servant. You can't do that from home. So I think we've had the hybrid to allow us to do that. So that was important. We have resumed travel. For us, given our important role of supervising banks, getting our bank examiners back in the field physically is very important. We did our work online while we were not in lockdown, but the truth is you cannot replicate or replace going in country, in the financial institutions, talking, looking, examining, engaging. That's what we're doing now. And then finally, our country outreach. We resumed our country outreach. We have now completed, as of June, all our countries. Antigua and Barbuda, we completed the week of the 12th of June. And those have been great, great encounters in terms of just holding ourselves accountable to the people we serve, telling them what we see in terms of performance and prospects, but also listening to them, what they think we should be looking at, the issues that they care about, and that we could assist with. So I've said a lot, but it was a great bounce back year in terms of just getting back out there and just pushing the strategic agenda, the priorities of the bank.
And as you said, bouncing forward, having learned all these lessons and pushing forward to see what the bank can help the region achieve overall.
Indeed.
Now, Governor, let's move to the bank's financial performance, which is a key part of the annual report. Now, the bank has reported a loss for the second consecutive year. Tell us about what the factors were that influenced this loss.
Right, so you are correct. We did have another loss, second in a row, about $55 million. The main reason really is the aggressive hikes by the Fed, the U.S. central banks, as it attempts to get inflation under control. And so because we are a very conservative bank in terms of our accounting treatment, whenever interest rates rise, the price of treasuries fall. So we take a hit, a reduction in value of our foreign securities. So that's what has happened. And as if you recall, the Fed aggressively raised interest rates from almost zero in March 2022. By the end of the year, it was at 4%. Today, it's over 5%. That's unprecedented increases. During that cycle of increases, you had 4 consecutive 75 basis points. Normally, the Fed would do 25 basis points. A big event would be at 50 basis points. But to do 4 75 basis points consecutively told you how unprecedented the actions of the Fed were. And that had an effect on us, and many financial institutions, to be honest. But I want to just give perspective. This is not the first time the central bank has, in fact, incurred a loss. There will be years when that will happen. In 2013, 14, and 15, we had 3 consecutive years of losses. Then the bank bounced back. We had the next 5 years of profits, including record profits in 2020. So we did make a loss. The good news is that we're making profits again. So 23-24 will be a bounce back year for us. I can tell you the first 3 months of the new financial year, which started April 2023, we are already close to $15 million in profits just for that first quarter alone. So we are seeing a bounce back. And just to explain briefly, the reason for the bounce back is the Fed has slowed its hike cycle because it's getting ready to sort of level off. and we are now enjoying high interest rates. I mentioned 5%. So whereas before we were almost at zero, and then the Fed aggressively rates hikes, so we had investment losses. What is happening now is that investment income has overtaken the losses, so the bank is again profitable. And of course, we're looking for ways to further insulate our balance sheet from potential rate hikes or adjustments. But we are a very conservative bank, so we make these adjustments whenever the Fed raises interest rates.
Moving to our strategic plan, we know that we implemented a new strategic plan as of 1st April 2022. And the strategic plan guides our activities as a bank, and it focuses on 5 pillars: financial stability, payment modernization and financial inclusion, the environment, social and corporate responsibility, digital transformation, and then organizational effectiveness and development. What are some of the key activities that the bank is pursuing as part of this new strat plan?
Well, the first one, in addition to keeping our dollar strong, is really keeping our financial system safe and sound. And again, we're pleased to report that we continue to oversee our financial institutions to ensure that people's deposits are safe. That is a work that we take very seriously, and we will continue. And like I said, we were pleased to be back out in the field with our bank examiners, doing both on-site inspection in respect of under the Banking Act, but also doing AML-CFT, combating finance and terrorism and money laundering. That is an important part of our work as well. And so keeping the system safe, protecting it from illicit actors, making sure that legitimate actors are able to operate in a clean, safe financial system, and to protect us against unilateral actions by external parties. I think you know we've been concerned about de-risking, and therefore we have to continue to be vigilant as well. So that's the first thing. I think the second area is really the work we continue to do in payments modernization. We have done significant work in upgrading our legal framework with our new payment system and services bill to really modernize the payment system, to allow us to really have new and additional operators in the payment space come to the fore, to recognize the rise of the digital economy, and to have the enabling framework around that. So we've done a lot of work there, and we continue to do. So that's a continuing effort at the strategic level. DCash is one project, but it is a part of a far bigger program in terms of payments modernization and financial inclusion. And I might add, on financial inclusion, for the first time in our history, we did a financial literacy and inclusion survey, the results of which will be released shortly. And the reason why we did that was to better target and shape our strategy for financial literacy and inclusion. We want our people to be financially not just literate, but empowered. We want them to be financially resilient. And we have to tackle that with empirical evidence, data, in terms of what. So for example, one of the things that we will share coming out of that survey is how many of our people are unbanked. You might be surprised, Karina. The number is bigger than you might think.
Yes, and unbanked means they don't get touched by the traditional banking service access to it.
They do not have a bank account.
Which some people take for granted.
Which many of us take for granted because some of us may have multiple bank accounts. Right. There are people in our currency union without a single bank account. And while we're on that point, let's be clear, it is difficult to open a bank account in the currency union. And I might be jumping ahead and preempting you, but I will tell you that is one of the things we definitely will be tackling in this new financial year. We have to make it easier for people to open bank accounts. So that's another area of focus. We've continued to work on areas like greening, addressing the climate risks. So we tackle it at 2 levels. One is at the level of greening the campus, which is our sort of demonstration effect or moral authority investment. But then there's the whole issue of assessing climate risk across the financial system. So now we are training our financial institutions, our licensees in terms of what to expect, and also creating a standard around climate risk, climate disclosures. You have to understand the risk, and then you have to basically mitigate the risk. Those risks could be physical, as in a hurricane hitting and destroying. It could be transition, as in a utility that is now operating with diesel, now having to transition to another fuel, and there's the risk of stranded assets. That's transition risk. Or you could have what they would call a black swan, a 1 in 100-year event of some kind. All of those risks have to be assessed, and that is part of our role. The other piece is financing, because once you assess those climate risks, we always say climate risk is financial risk. That's why we are involved. But then when you assess, what are you going to do? How do you mitigate? You need funding. So part of our job is also to look to mobilize resources for green financing to assist us with making that transition. We're very big on renewable energy, as you know. We are now essentially at net zero on our campus. Very proud of that project.
That's huge.
We've won 2 awards for that project. But we want to see our member countries get more and more renewables in their energy mix to lower the cost of energy, to strengthen our energy security, to make us more resilient against shocks like energy prices occasioned by a war, as we have with the war in Ukraine. So those are areas that we continue to push. And then I would just add on the organizational effectiveness pillar, one of the things that I'm very pleased about, and since you are from corporate relations, I must make mention of, is our recent award by Central Banking for our communications initiative. This is a very pleasing award for our central bank and for the department. And I want to take this opportunity to again say kudos to our corporate relations, the department that anchors and leads our corporate communications. The podcast has been very impactful in our currency union. One of the things I hear when I move around the currency union from ordinary folk is that we see in the bank more, we hear in the bank more, we better understanding what you do. Still a lot to learn, but we're seeing and feeling the bank. That is a direct result of this podcast and the efforts you and your colleagues have put in, Shermalan, who heads the team, and all of you, to really ensure that we get the word out, as I like to say, to make it plain, to make it simple, to open up the bank, make it accessible. We work for the people of our currency union. Our central bank is their central bank. It's important they understand what we do in their name, you know, and so I'm very gratified by that award, because I think, to be honest with you, while it came out of the work from the pandemic, it's 7 years in the making. This podcast started in 2016, and it has made a lot of impact. I go around and people point to how it's used, the content is used in radio programs, in television programs, public and private. And of course, we're pleased. It's free. We don't, you know, you're free to use it and get the word out. So I just want to acknowledge what you and the team have done in respect of communications. I'm very pleased about that.
Governor, thank you. And as you said, we are ultimately here to serve the people of the ECCU and to open ourselves as a bank to them. Now, Governor, the ECCB ultimately works to impact the lives of residents and citizens of the ECCU in a positive way, transformation, as you like to say. As we look ahead, what can the people of the region expect from the ECCB?
So, as you know, we are in fact celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. Year-long celebrations which we launched in January. One of the things I said at the launch in January was I challenged our region to pursue the big push. What is the big push? It's built around an idea of doubling the size of our economies individually and collectively over the next decade. So I asked the question, what will it take to double the size of our economy over the next 10 years? If you are ECCU level, it's 21 billion to 42 billion. But every member country has a contribution in that. Antigua would be 5 billion. You know, every country has a number. And the idea is really not just strictly about economics. It's really about how do we create a conversation about what could be and should be in our currency union. What do we want our future to look like? And what is our individual and collective responsibilities for that future? Because it requires both individual and collective action. And we've identified some theaters of transformation, like wealth creation, like credit expansion, like digital transformation, like food and nutrition security, like energy security, like human stock formation. I could go on and on. I think I've made 6 or 7 right there. what do we need to do in these theaters, both nationally, individually, nationally, and regionally? If we think wealth creation for a sec, what will it take for you, Karina, to double your net worth over the next decade? Let's bring this home.
Yes.
Make it real personal. That might help focus the mind.
Yes.
What will it take to double your net worth over the next decade?
Some thought is required.
So absolute thought is required, but there's some tools that are available. One of which is how we invest in the regional and international capital markets. So on that point, I remind everyone that in the ECCU, only 4%, 1 in 25 of our people, actively invest in the regional and international capital markets. In the United States, that's 60%, 3 in 5.
That's a huge gap.
Huge opportunity. So we have $25 billion in our banking system in deposits. We want to see more of our people not just be savers, they're good savers, many of us, but investors, financial investors. Tap that market to create income and wealth. And that's why I'm very pleased, for example, the recent launch by the Unit Trust of Trinidad and Tobago of a mutual fund, first in St. Lucia, but eventually throughout the currency union. They are now licensed by the Eastern Caribbean Security Regulatory Commission. And very important for me is that the minimum investment size is 100 US or 270 EC, making it accessible to almost everybody or anybody. That is an important next step for us as a region in building wealth. And if you think about building wealth, it's also about financial resilience. You have to have buffers for the rainy day. That is a simple example at a personal level of what wealth creation looks like. But we can ladder it up to take it national or regional. And that's the conversation that we want. So when we talk about economy, it's not just economics. It's not just GDP. It's about opportunity, expanding the pie, getting our young people who are unemployed or underemployed, fully engaged, employed and contributing, getting some of our misdirected youth to see opportunity, perhaps in the creative economy, so they can express themselves, realize their potential. So we see a reduction in social pathology such as crime and violence. That's the conversation that we want to have. And that's what we're pressing. And during our country outreach, we've put that question. And we've had some very good engagements around it. It needs to continue. And we need to come to consensus on what our individual, national, and regional actions will be to support this doubling of our economies and really opportunities for our people. So that is to get to some specifics around ECCB itself. I mentioned we are going to be pursuing the Office of Financial Conduct. We want to make sure that banks treat our customers well. We have had a lot of complaints of banks mistreating customers. We need to make sure that there is clarity around what banks can and cannot do and redress for customers who feel aggrieved about how they're treated by their financial institution, whether that's a bank or credit union. We need to, as I mentioned, address the issue of opening a bank account. We are committed to simplifying the process for opening a bank account without ignoring our obligations to protect the financial system in respect of money laundering and financing terrorism. But we can't continue with a situation where people are locked out, or it is so difficult, even for a young person starting a business, to open a bank account. It is become ridiculous. It's unacceptable. We have to address that. We've asked for proposals from our financial institutions. They have recently submitted some proposals, which we are now reviewing. It may require some legislative amendments. If that's what it is, that's what we will do through our governments. But we have to address the issue of the ease of opening a bank account. And I give you the assurance that the central bank will work with our financial institutions and our governments to address this pressing issue. ECCB at 40, a year of reflection, celebration, and implementation. It's a good time for us to take stock of what we've achieved together. We've achieved a lot. And I pay tribute to our founding fathers and framers, I should say founding mothers as well, because Dame Eugenia is in there, as well as my predecessors, all persons who have worked in the bank, past and present. A lot of people have come through these hallowed walls of the central bank, and I want to just salute them all for their contribution. Now it's time for us to take it to the next level. It's a privilege for us to serve the people of the currency union. We get joy in serving. We are motivated to serve and work hard every day for the people of the currency union. Let's continue to put our hands together to push and transform this region. And as people of faith, always, always, we must look to our God to give us the guidance and the light to proceed. And I close with something that I say all the time. You know this very well. As a region, we cannot change our history and we cannot change our geography. But together, we can elevate our development trajectory through innovation and collective action. Let's do it. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of ECCB Connects. We've been speaking with Governor of the ECCB, Timothy N.J. Antoine, about the bank's performance over the 2022-23 financial year. Governor Antoine also shared how the bank will continue to work to transform the lives of the people of the ECCU as we move forward as a region. Stay connected with us and be sure to join us next week when we bring you another episode of ECCB Connects.